First, it was California. They want to restrict the energy use for your car. Now, Switzerland is proposing the same thing. What country is next that wants to turn off the electricity to allow you to charge your car? If you want to know, this video is for you. Stay tuned.
This is everyone's favorite podcast, The Commandments of Wealth. I'm Alex,
I'm Joel.
and we are wealth managers from a wealth management firm based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where we serve six, seven, and eight figure entrepreneurs Canada wide, coast to coast.
And we're going to be going over some of the insights and strategies that we have implemented to help our clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth for the next generation. And today we have an article that is following up on some of our ESG themes, right?
Exactly. So wonderful stuff, actually. And wonderful depending on whether you own an electric vehicle or not. But so, as Joel mentioned, right? So, first California, now Switzerland. What's going on in Switzerland, you might ask? Well, according to this Fox Business article, Switzerland could ban electric vehicle use during the energy crisis, says reports. So, I wanted to just share just some excerpt here for you. So, the Telegraph is saying that they
So wait,
report.
this article is an article of an article. The Telegraph?
Yeah, the Telegraph.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
So
okay.
like they were the one that broke the story, right?
And then they're following up
And then
on
they're
it.
following up on it. So the Telegraph reported on Saturday that the Swiss officials have drafted emergency proposals to restrict power usage if things get bad this winter. So, for example, shops may need to reduce their hours. Streaming services may need to be limited. Can you imagine you have a Netflix quota? Jeez,
Going back in time.
right? Yeah, they could reduce their streaming services, may need to be limited, and buildings may only be heated to 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Other bans, according to the Telegraph, may include concerts, theater performances, and sporting events, all to prevent a blackout. The reason Switzerland is preparing for possible blackouts is that the country relies on imported energy during the summer months. While more than half or 60% of the country's energy sources comes from hydro, in the winter months, production slows and the country relies on imports, right? So we've talked about this too. So they're in Europe. So, many European countries rely on imported oil and the
gas.
natural gas from other countries, an example being Russia for a lot of them. So now that we've kind of touched on that, let's go here. Sorry about these intrusive ads. So what I wanted to bring here is this is a visual article from a great website called the Visual Capitalist. So this is basically showing the Europe's energy crisis and the global economy, and it's basically taking the data and putting it to nice, visually easy to understand illustrations. So let's back this up. So let's do some detective work to find out why things are happening the way they are in Switzerland and why they're even contemplating banning electric vehicles. So if we look at the impact of impact on consumers of high energy costs, so there's three categories here. There's energy, there's food, and then can you read what the blue is for?
The blue is everything else that is not geo.
Oh, okay, so you gotcha. So if we look here, so
Orange is energy.
the origins energy. So Japan, while they're the lowest tier, their economy is very different. It's due to their population as well as their markets are in a very different situation than the vast majority of countries in the world. So we're not going to focus too much on Japan, but for everybody else, their economies are more similar. France, Canada, and the United States, they are impacted, but just not to the same degree as you can see as the rest of Europe. So United Kingdom, Italy, Germany being the heaviest.
And why is that the case?
So the reason is that these countries, what they have in common is they relied a lot on the importing of oil and natural gas,
Okay.
right? And in the case of, say, Germany, for example, right, they were simultaneously making very large strides to be more dependent on renewable energy as a transition away from traditional energies like natural gas and petroleum and things like that. So this unforeseen event of like the war messing up their supply chain really hit them while they were vulnerable, right? So that's why they're an outlier. So then for Italy and the UK, it's a very similar story. just isn't impacting them, as significantly as it is impacting Germany. Is there anything that you wanted to add to this?
Oh yeah, the common denominator is kind of what you mentioned.
Hmm.
It's you can kind of see here the countries that are suffering more in terms of inflationary pressures coming directly from energy
Hmm.
are in Europe. Europe is the place in the world that really leads in ESG mantra
Hmm.
without being focused on balance. And then certain those countries, primarily Germany, not only did they have a very aggressive focus on ESG, but the other side of the coin is they had a very aggressive focus in
Hmm.
terms of where they got their energy from, Russia primarily.
Yeah.
And when that exogenous event happened, which is the war, um, it exasperated the problem.
Hmm.
And this is why you're seeing now energy costs and inflation costs in Europe
Hmm.
outstripping demand by a good margin,
Hmm.
and the inflation problem being in some cases one third or even 100% more
Hmm.
extreme than what we're experiencing here in Canada
Yeah.
and the US.
And look at this, or even here, they're mentioning that energy price inflation has soared over 40% in Europe since 2021.
Yeah, and you can kind of see. I know this article. I took a look at it. Had, yeah, the breakdown between the economy
Yeah.
on how much we rely on some
Yeah,
of this
exactly.
stuff, right?
So the core parts of the economy that we'll touch on is transportation, residential, and industrial. So transportation, 90% petroleum, right?
Easy.
Like that's dunzo right there. And so if you start, forcefully peeling back petroleum and
Without having
without having
replacements.
without having replacement, these truckers and the people that make our infrastructure work, the people that make your grocery store get stocked, they're going to have to charge more, which means that they're going to pass that cost on to the stores. The stores are then going to pass that cost on to the customer.
And that goes across the board. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That goes across the board to the clothing,
Yeah.
to the food.
Hmm.
Every single thing that we move that comes to our table or our grocery stores or our malls,
Hmm.
that's the data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then like residential
Same thing, right? You look at natural gas and
and petroleum.
yeah,
So
that
it's
makes up
50%.
50%.
Exactly.
So now it would cost more as well to
Yeah.
move it, to cut it down,
Mhm.
etc. Okay,
Right.
and then industrial, yeah,
Yeah. So no.
even more than 50.
Yeah, more than 50 because like 34% petroleum, 40% natural gas. That's already 74%.
Fantastic.
Right.
So all our industrial equipment
Hmm.
and our industrial use cases, our planes, our cars, our buildings,
Yeah.
our plastics,
Hmm.
our tires,
Hmm.
more than 70% comes from oil and natural gas.
Exactly.
You can see very quickly
Mhm.
how this can cause a dramatic impact on inflation and on
Mhm.
our lives.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this right before we started the pod,
Mhm.
right? If you have even 2 years of back-to-back 8% inflation years, what's so that's 8% inflation one year and then 8% inflation another year.
Yeah.
What's the average income gain as a percentage that, in the best case, the average person gets a year?
So the average person
The
would
wages
get roughly
increase
3%.
3%.
Increase. That's average.
So if you have 2 years of back-to-back 8% inflation, which is 16,
Mhm.
and you divide it by the average wage growth, let's say 3, which is being generous,
Mhm.
what is that? How many years have we now gone backwards in terms of wage growth?
You basically set the average person back
5,
more than
6 years.
5-6 years, right? And that's just to catch up.
That's just to
Right,
catch
and
up.
this is to catch up. And as you know, like all of these different industries, while they are connected, they are still mutually exclusive to a degree, right? So not everything is going to fall in line at the same speed too, right? So yeah, it's not looking good. The longer it takes for this to stabilize, the longer it's going to take for the average person's income and purchasing power to stabilize and catch up,
Exactly.
right? And that's going to cause its own problems because like a lot of people are going to be disenfranchised and like basically like locked out of opportunities. In worst case, some people are going to be locked out of necessities.
And that
Right.
will bleed into society and bleed into how people vote,
Mhm.
think, eat.
Yeah.
like, and that's why we're such a big advocate of taking a balanced approach, to structuring your economy, a balanced approach to energy, a balanced approach to your portfolio. Because if you lean one way or the other, the damage can be significant, and you don't realize it until you're in it.
Yeah.
Right? And this is now the problem that is currently occurring.
Mhm.
In the beginning of this video, we mentioned, first it was California.
Mhm.
So California said we're going to ban all ICE or uh, combustible engine
Engines.
cars.
Uh huh.
I think it was 2035.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then literally a week later, they said, don't plug in your car, your electric
Yeah.
car, because we have rolling blackouts.
Mm.
Canada has also said now lately that they are trying to ban the sale of all
Combustible.
engines by 2035.
Mhm.
Switzerland is saying the same thing. So now you see California and Switzerland running into a similar issue.
Mhm.
I think it would be irresponsible to think that if more and more of these rules and these forced timelines in terms of energy transition come to the forefront,
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if you did not see more states and more countries trying to implement these energy rationing directives.
Mhm.
And that can only mean one thing: you don't have cheap energy,
Mhm.
you have a slowing and contracting economy. Very
Exactly.
simple.
Yep.
Okay? So,
You know, on the investment side too, what we also wanted to bring up was um, when it comes to investing, right? Like you don't want to put yourself out there
balanced
too
approach.
much. You want a balanced approach, right? Um, somebody might say, does that mean that you have no, fun in your portfolio? No, that's not what it means.
what if someone says, I want to have some electrification plays? They're asking about Tesla, which is pretty heavily overvalued, and they're saying, I want to have 10%, or they're looking for a lithium miner and they can only find either something in China
Mhm.
or something very speculative in Canada and USA. Like, how does someone take a balanced approach? Is it by investing in something like Mercedes or?
Well, the reason why I wanted to bring up this Mercedes article here, for example, is you mentioned. So for Tesla, they're in a unique spot in the sense that they are all in on the electric vehicle,
Okay.
right? Whereas you see a company like Mercedes is a top G, top dog in the combustible engine space, right?
Okay.
So what they're doing, like many other big, vehicle companies, is they are making their advent into the electric vehicle space, and they're finding and exploring new ways of getting additional revenue sources on top of just being in the electric vehicle space. So what they're doing here, and I'm sure this isn't going to make a lot of Mercedes fans happy, but they're experimenting with $1,200 a year throttling of your car. So what they're saying is that, like,
Performance of
yeah,
the
if you want like the true performance of the car, you're gonna have to pay an additional $1,200 a year in a subscription service for them to use the software to unlock, your car specs. So again, we can talk about whether we want to see more of that or not, but the point of the matter is there will be people that will pay for this, right? And if it does take off, this could be an excellent new revenue stream for Mercedes. So if you were to look at Mercedes and you were to look at Tesla, right? Both of these companies are in the EV space. But an advantage to Mercedes is that it also has got one big, thick baseball player leg
You're talking about their old revenue stream.
in their old revenue stream, which is like being a top dog in like the combustible space, right?
Yeah.
So it's a more balanced,
More balanced
yeah.
approach to
Yeah.
playing the EV and electrification market. You're absolutely
Exactly.
right? Tesla is a rich stock. I believe Elon Musk is nothing short of a genius. But it is a rich stock. And what you're paying for that stock is a lot of the idea of a lot of perpetual growth for less fundamentals, less security, less revenue, less profits. And if an investor wants to play the electrification theme without going too far up the risk ladder, something like Daimler or Mercedes-Benz AMG stock is a great way to look at it because, like you said, they have one foot in the old world and one foot in the new world.
Exactly. So with that, I think that's a great segue into our commandment of the day, which is don't get swept away by hot trends. Anchor yourself to your financial plan.
Yeah, and for everybody that can be something different. For some people, it's I can only afford to take a little bit of risk in my portfolio. Others, it's I need to get at least 7% a year. And others have a very, very aggressive tax and estate planning strategy, so I don't need large returns. But the goal of this is not to get caught in all the noise around us when it comes to these different investing trends and momentum, but to focus on what is necessary for your life and your financial plan. And a lot of the times, it's a balanced approach. You're not
Exactly.
concentrating 100% of your portfolio in a Tesla stock, but maybe having a combination of Tesla, Daimler, and Renault, for example.
Exactly. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this episode. Please like, subscribe if you like the video, you like the content, comment, reach out to us if you have any questions and you want to find out, how you can make sense of this information, how you can get this to, benefit you. Till next time, though, take care, everyone.
Ciao.